I'm just beating a dead horse, trying to get people to think critically and think independently.
Space is real! Earth is a globe!
We landed on the moon.
I don't let it stop me. Right, so a couple of weeks ago I made this video about Let's Talk About Space, where I talked about the ridiculousness of believing that we've sent anything into a near perfect vacuum. Let's not even get into the mechanics behind the pressures being maintained on this Earth without a fixed, firm barrier between Earth and space. Let's call it a membrane. Show me the membrane. See, because near perfect vacuum, Earth pressures, no solid. When you think what they need to do to build a vacuum, the size of the actual chamber, the thickness of the walls, etc. When you just apply your mind to how much effort goes in to creating a vacuum on Earth, think about how the pressures maintain on Earth within a vacuum when there's no solid membrane holding those pressures in. We're supposed to believe that it's gravity? I don't know. Anyway, let's take a look first off at the human body. Although nobody can decide exactly what percentage of the human body is made up of water, there are some pretty good guesses and they all seem to be around a certain figure. So let's just suffice it to say the human body contains a lot of water, and the spacesuit itself actually contains a water tank. So there's water and fluid, a lot of water and fluid that's contained within the human body and within the spacesuit. So let's go back to space. How cold is space? Hot things move quickly, cold things move slowly. If atoms come to a complete stop, they're at absolute zero. Space is just above that, at an average temperature of 2.7 Kelvin. About minus 455 degrees Fahrenheit. So that's pretty damn cold. Pretty damn cold. Okay, what happens to water when it gets pretty damn cold? That's right, it freezes. But the thing is, water contains air and oxygen, and it contains air. So what happens to water in a vacuum? An excessive amount of pressure will turn water into ice at room temperature. Consequently, zero pressure, like in a vacuum, causes water to immediately turn into gas. This is why water boils in a vacuum. So in a vacuum, water can boil at a far lower temperature. Well, it is very cold in space, but we're being told that water boils in a vacuum. So that got me thinking about spacesuits. Are spacesuits pressurized? Current spacesuits are pressurized to 4.3 pounds per square inch, or PSI, well below the usual atmospheric pressure on Earth, 14.7 PSI at sea level, but still providing a pressurized environment that also allows astronauts to move around. Okay, so we've ascertained that space is a near perfect vacuum, and as a result is extremely cold, 2.7 kelvins cold. But water boils in a vacuum. Spacesuits are pressurized, therefore they're containing both water and air, and also, obviously, the human body contains an awful lot of water and whatever air is in the lungs, and if you've got air in your cavities, the air in your body. Now it's time for my favourite YouTube channel that thinks he's a scientist But he's more of a scientist than Simon Dan, let's just say that, because this guy actually does experiments. So let's have a look.
Okay, now let's see what happens if we put a balloon in the vacuum chamber.
Now, what do you think's going to happen here? I kind of guessed what was going to happen. If the balloon is compressed by a lot of pressure, it gets smaller and smaller. But now it's getting depressed. It's going into a vacuum. So naturally, it's going to expand. So naturally, the next thing to test would be water balloons in a vacuum chamber.
Okay, so we know that water boils in a vacuum chamber.
Yes, we have confirmed through an internet search that water does indeed boil in a vacuum chamber.
But what about if it's in a water balloon? Will the pressure from the balloon contracting be enough to hold the water in the liquid phase, or will it still expand and boil? Let's check it out and see what happens.
Yeah, let's do that. And all the while we're doing that, let's also make sure we think about how much air and water is inside the human body, inside the human lung, inside a spacesuit.
Oh, there it goes. Whoa, and it started boiling. See, as soon as it came out of the water balloon, it started boiling immediately. So that means that the balloon was putting some pressure on it because it wasn't boiling like that in the balloon, but as soon as it popped, it just started boiling.
So let's try and wrap our heads around this. Space is minus 455 degrees Fahrenheit, where water would turn into solid ice, yet water boils in a vacuum. And the vacuums that we create here on Earth, I don't think that was a perfect vacuum that lad was creating, and the water boiled. The air expanded in the balloons. Think about the human lung, it's just a big balloon full of water. So, are you really still prepared to believe that it's possible for a human being to go out into the near perfect vacuum of space wearing only fabric clothing and stay alive? No matter what's around them, doesn't matter, because they're going into space, they do their spacewalks, they go out in their spacesuits, allegedly. Do you really think that's possible? In minus 455 degrees Fahrenheit, apparently, where water freezes but doesn't because it boils because it's in a vacuum. Please think about this.